When it comes to investing, retirement, taxes, healthcare, and estate planning, the decisions you make today can greatly affect the quality of life for you and your loved ones tomorrow. What you need is straight and unbiased information on the most important issues you'll face when planning for your retirement and financial future. Good news! You found Premier Retirement Radio with Jeff Vogan. Jeff is the founder of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and he's been guiding people financially and into retirement for 30 years. So get ready for an hour of the most comprehensive financial information on the radio. Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan. And now here's Jeff Vogan and Jeff Shade.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the one big, beautiful bill and how it affects investors and retirees. My name's Jeff Shade, and as always, I'm just here to ask the questions. But the words of wisdom and solid advice, of course, they come from Jeff Vogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Hey, Jeff, how you doing today?
Doing good. How are you doing? Always good to be here.
Good to be with you as well, and I am doing well, Jeff. Hope everybody else is having a great weekend. A lot to talk about today. The one big, beautiful bill was signed on July 4th, fittingly. So I want to get to that, but before we get to that, I want to cover a few things on current events. The deadline for the tariffs has expired July 9th. It's been pushed up to August the 1st, and Trump says, listen, if you don't come online by that time, we're going to impose some 25% tariffs on Japanese and South Korean goods. Do you think that the president's going to stick with this time, or is he going to push that deadline further out? Is this just a negotiating tactic?
Well, I think there's a little bit of worry that the market is overvalued and that they'll probably cause a hiccup in the market. We've already seen that just with the announcement that they're going to be extended. People are still worried about the tariffs again. You think about it, and there's really only been two deals that I know of that have been made. The Vietnam deal, which is good, and then also the UK deal. There hasn't been anybody else come out, in our favor. OPEC's going to increase oil production. They need to do that to be competitive because we basically opened up the US of A, which is have the biggest oil stores in the world as far as the reserves that we have available. And so we're going to our own production is going to keep prices down. So OPEC's going to probably have to try to step up production or to keep up just for their own benefit. But that creates lower energy costs. It might not be good for your stock purchases in Exxon and some of those big oil companies, but as far as getting goods and services to their destinations and as far as getting you to and from your workplace, church, and fun places, even transportation companies, we're seeing airlines rebound, cruise ships rebound. I mean, those are big fuel users, and anything that has to do with fuel and the prices coming down is a good thing. So some of those things are happening behind the scenes that don't really have to do with tariffs, just have to do with costs overall. Now, tariffs do increase the cost of some goods sometimes. And it's funny that all the foreign countries are saying tariffs are bad, but they sure like them when they charge us for them. They charge us more than we've ever charged. We just want a level playing field. And I think Trump's ideas and his goals to basically play in more of a level playing field where other countries have more of an incentive to buy our products. And if companies here and the Americans make more money, manufacturing that moves here makes more money, they'll be able to consume more things, including those from other countries. So while some people, it seems, that aren't really business-minded focus do math very simply and think, oh, there's a finite resources of income. We have to charge this much in taxes to pay all of our bills because we have this much in bills. It's not the truth. I mean, the economy and the income growth and consumption, everything can expand together if everybody scratches each other's back and we play on an even playing field. I think America's been so rich and prosperous that it seems like, well, we ought to just give away some of our benefits to these other countries that are striving and so forth. And I don't have a problem with giving away things to other countries from the standpoint of allowing them to sell their goods in our countries on a favorable basis if they buy ours back and if we build each other's economies together. And that's what I think Trump's goals are. Countries that have not come to the table and set any deals are kind of enjoying the fact that we're putting off tariffs. I think the more Trump extends those deadlines from the Freedom Day of April 1st that ended up with a big market crash. And he says, oh, never mind, we'll push it out to July. And then the market was probably due for a correction. It just hit its all-time high again, just finally got back to even, only up 4 or 5% year to date, but it hit all-time highs, and so everybody's getting excited. But then again, here comes the tariff deadline, and the market started softening up earlier this past week. And then Trump says, well, not until August 1st. We'll see how that goes. I think other countries are going to get pretty much jaded into thinking, well, as long as we don't come to the table, he's just going to keep pushing these tariff deals out indefinitely. Trump's going to have to set a hard line eventually. And I think this extension might have been the last one or maybe one too many, because I don't think it's going to incent anybody to run to the table. They're going to maybe come around on August 1st and say, now what? I don't know if they want to wait that long. It's only a few weeks to get some deals made. I think Trump's a businessman and he'll get the deals made if they want to play ball. But if they don't, we might be seeing the start of that recession, a big market correction in August if he puts his foot down. I don't think he wants to see the market plummet. He doesn't like being blamed by the Democrats for everything that's their problem, and they make it Trump's problem. But if the market corrects, which it's due for, and it was due for even during the Biden administration, which the market's been manipulated for a couple of years now, well, longer than that, but it's been manipulated in spite of weakness, in spite of economic weakness. I think it's funny that, these people say, we're in the greatest economy ever. And oh my gosh, GDP is only growing by 2%. Inflation is actually from almost 2 back up to in the 3 range now. That's not good. There's more houses listed for sale than have ever been listed, and they're not being sold. That doesn't sound like a good economy. There's, the household survey, when it came to the job report, said that there were 600,000 jobs, less jobs than there was the prior month. Yet somehow the administration or the economic board, the jobs committee, they report 139,000 new jobs. And they do this by what's called the birth-death matrix, which is weird. And I have no idea. They don't actually survey companies. If you look at ADP, which is the biggest payroll company, and extrapolate the added payroll and the minus payroll, you get a whole different number. Usually the next month, they'll revise them, say, we didn't really make 139,000 jobs. We lost 200. But again, if you look at the household survey, which is random, and it's supposedly scientific polling, where you get a scientific sampling of America and you ask households, are there more people working in your house than were working last week? Did anybody lose their job? And it looks like 600,000 people lost their jobs. It doesn't look like we have a robust economy, yet the market seems to keep on nipping at those all-time highs. We've also seen earnings revisions come down basically month over month over the last few months. Yet we don't hear that on the news. And I'm not saying that the sky is falling is going to help. The sky may sort of be falling we should be cautious of it falling. And I'm not trying to be Chicken Little saying the sky's falling either, because I think if they ever report that kind of thing or show us what the economy is really doing and raise concerns about it, that'll be the catalyst for the next sell-off. I think the next sell-off may happen with something that has to do with tariffs and people not coming to the table, or the tariffs being imposed and people up in arms saying, oh my gosh, now the sky's falling. And then everybody says, we got to get out of the market. It's going to crash. And then that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think if Trump has his way as a businessman, he could fix the economy over a period of time, maybe a couple of years, and get earnings growing again, get the GDP actually growing again, get the manufacturing that's been promised to be brought back home if they start hiring people and actually get goods and services made here or produced here that aren't presently being produced here. We'll see the economy rebound. Now, if we can somehow push off a market correction or crash for a couple of years, which we've already done, then we might see earnings start being supportive of the levels where the stock market trades at right now. I don't think that the market can sustain any large gains like they have the last couple of years without earnings that support it, and we have not had that. So I'm still cautious. And I think the reason, to answer your question, is why the tariff discussion keeps getting put off is because nobody wants to see the market crash or correct on their watch or go into what's deemed an actual recession, even though recessions are natural in a normal cycle of life and economy, and we're due for one. So, let's not be afraid of them. Let's just embrace the fact that they happen, be ready for them when they come. I wish it would just get over and we could move on and reset, because that's what would make everything healthier, more predictable investments, more predictable returns, more predictable income, less stomach aches when we watch the market go up and down and not know what the news is going to actually say next day or what the next economic or world event's going to happen that'll make the market have a hiccup and us lose 401k money or lose more money than we can stomach if we have risk on. And that's why we always have to reevaluate where you are in life and what kind of risk you're willing to take. I don't think it's a bad thing to continue to take risk in spite of the market being overvalued if you're not using that money on a month-to-month basis, if you can afford to wait, or especially if you're dollar cost averaging in. So I've never been a proponent of avoiding the market altogether. I have been a proponent of not being in the market if you can't afford to lose the money, and if you need to use it because you're about to retire, you're already retired. Let's be safe. Let's be smart. Let's use principal protection with upside that are based on the market. So when the market's good, we make money. And when the market's not good, we don't lose money. What's wrong with that philosophy? Well, it contradicts Wall Street, and it contradicts where the big money is. It contradicts a lot of other brokers and advisors in town that love to sling back stuff about what I say, because I like to use all the tools in the tool bag to build our financial house. I don't just use stocks and bonds like many of them do. And some people don't like that idea, that approach, and they make a big hullabaloo about it. But guess what? Our clients are very secure here, and very few leave. Most of them, if they do leave, it's because they die or pass on, or it's a natural transition. Definitely not because they lost half of their portfolio and can't afford to live in retirement, because we don't take that approach. But again, the tariff issue is real. It will probably cause some hiccups. We just had the big, beautiful bill we can talk about. There's some things there that are questionable on whether or not it's going to work out the way a businessman sees it working out, as opposed to politicians who only do math one way. We got to take in as much as we spend, and we want to spend more, so we have to take in more and tax more. Well, Trump's big, beautiful bill is anti-tax, and it actually keeps more money in the pockets of the normal Main Street person here in America, so they can spend more of that money and create more economic benefit, create more taxes overall. So again, there's probably a lot that remains to be seen. I think the momentum that we see Trump having from the standpoint of getting done what he promised he would get done, Democrats are going to say, oh, he lied. He said he was going to get zero tax on Social Security, zero tax on tips, zero this, zero that. And he didn't. Well, there's always compromises in bills. The goal was to shoot for the stars. If you shoot for the lowest branch on a tree and jump, you might not get there. But if you shoot for the stars, I mean, you'll probably get up to the branches and maybe past the treetops and maybe up to the sky or up to the moon. But you have to shoot high, compromise, and still get most of the benefits that were proposed. And I think that's the art of the deal that Trump does, is he shoots extremely high, gets a lot of what he wants. The benefits are going to remain to be seen. And if we can get the tariff wars or the trade wars just done and get us on good, stable footing to where we at least know what the deal is, then I think the markets will stabilize. I think companies will learn how to maximize their earnings. They might end up having to restructure their marketing approach or their business model a little bit. Hopefully it won't include tons of AI that leaves a bunch of people unemployed. That would be bad. But I think the market in general will make up room for any of those changes, and we'll have a robust economy going forward. America is a great country. It's very resilient. It seems to weather storms better than anybody. There's been a few little hiccups, and I wouldn't even say really any great storms lately, but there's been some close calls with what I would say could have been catalysts for the next economic downturn or to start us into a full-blown recession that we've avoided, and we've been able to get by them. I hope we can continually do that. I hope we can make money in the market. I don't think the overvaluations that we're experiencing right now can be sustainable forever. And so we've either got to get earnings up and the economy to grow, or we've got to have a reset and get the market and the economy kind of in sync again to where we can make sense out of it and make smart decisions and make wise investment decisions, better investment decisions going forward. But it remains to be seen whether August 1st is really that next big day or not. It's only a few weeks away, so it's not too far. We'll be talking about what happened, if it did or didn't.
We're talking with Jeff Ogan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. We're talking about the tariffs, and of course, we're going to be talking about the one big, beautiful bill. If you're hearing the show today, you'd like to sit down and talk with Jeff about your individual situation, we are offering this Premier Retirement Review at no cost and no obligation. To get yours, 520-780-9059. You can make that call right now. Maybe you've got a plan from someplace else and you want a second opinion on that. Maybe you don't have a plan, you'd like to begin a plan, or you've just got questions. This is just a casual conversation, so reach out to us today, 520-780-9059. Make that call today. Leave your name and number. Shelley will call you back during the week and set up a time for you to have that casual conversation with Jeff here at Premier Retirement. Again, it's not going to cost you a dime. No obligation, 520-780-9059. We're also online at premred.com, premret.com. Okay, Jeff, let's start talking about the big, beautiful bill here. We touched on a couple of things. What is the big, beautiful bill really all about? It's really mostly tax cuts, isn't it?
Well, the main thing that I like is that it continues the tax cuts that came around in 2017. We've been kind of scrambling the last few years to try to get people to pay less taxes on less money at a lower tax rate in order to accommodate the return of the old tax brackets that were due to come due next year. So to extend that makes us we can now be a little less aggressive in our tax planning. We can still pay taxes on IRA funds that we move to Roths or we move to LERPs, or when we make taxable money, tax-free money, we don't have to hurry and do it as much. Maybe we can do it all at the 22% tax bracket instead of the 24% tax bracket. We've still got a $30,000 standard deduction. In addition to that, if you're a senior on Social Security, you get another $6,000 in reduction in the taxes as a top line deduction off of the Social Security. Now, it wasn't free Social Security. We didn't get that. Obviously, the Democrats are going to say, oh, Trump lied. He says there will be no tax on Social Security. He's a bogus president. Here's the deal. Well, Democrats didn't give any relief to taxpayers and receiving Social Security benefits. I mean, they would have loved to get anything from them. They got $6,000 each. That's $12,000 per household, in addition to a $30,000 standard deduction, which will probably go up based on the cost of living adjustment, maybe 2 or 3% next year again. Now, that new deduction does phase out over above $75,000 income for singles and $150,000 for joint income. And that's the way I understand it. It's based on your provisional income, not necessarily taxable income. And the cool thing about provisional income is it's anything on a 1099, basically. Social Security, part of Social Security will count as provisional income. But the things that don't count as provisional income are like the LIRP, the life insurance retirement plan money that is non-taxable and it's non-1099. And if you create a situation where instead of using Roth conversions where Roth income is still income, it's just tax-free income, it's still considered provisional, that, in my understanding, will still affect the phase out. Now, of course, after we get our first round of tax returns filed and all the adjustment that the IRS sends back, we'll figure out exactly how it works. But, this is a long bill. I don't know if I could read and digest, I think it was 900 pages.
Right.
That's not a simple bill to read. I think they wanted to read all of it. I think most of the legislators actually had time to read most of it, or at least have assistants read most of it and make a reasonably good decision on their vote based on understanding the bill. It wasn't like pass the bill, then you can read it, like Pelosi said a few years ago. I mean, that's ridiculous. But the Democrats had plenty of time under Biden to do things like this that would help the Main Street person. Now, they're all touting that it only helps billionaires, but everybody gets a tax break, billionaires included, but billionaires pay more taxes than the non-billionaires anyway. And if they continue to get the same tax breaks that they got before, and the majority of households save $2,000 or $3,000 a year in taxes, which this will look like it'll do, maybe even more. If you're in a 28% tax bracket, or let's say the 24 right now, and you've got some of these deductions would have gone back to, if the standard deduction would have gone back to like $20,000 like it was before it changed, that would have cost you an extra $2,000, $3,000, but just on the standard deduction part, if you're not itemizing. If you're in a situation where even if you're in the 22 bracket and you've got a $12,000 deduction on your Social Security benefits, in addition to the 50 or the 25% deduction that you get based on your income. But if you're in a 22% bracket, you don't get a deduction, but at least now you get a $12,000 household deduction if you're married. At 22%, I mean, that's another $2,500 in tax deduction. So if a household continues to have in retirement, has an extra $5,000 that they can spend, that goes a long way to cover the increased costs that have happened over the last administration with 25, 30% inflation. Now people can go back to affording food and not worrying about running out of money as much, and affording gas because that's going down, and affording to, maintain a reasonably good lifestyle on a reasonably conservative income. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just the tax breaks, or not that, just keeping a tax system that we can understand and live with in place, rather than go back to higher taxes and go back to losing more money, especially after losing spendable income based on the inflation that's taken place. Because the inflation hasn't gone backwards. It might only be growing at 3% right now, and maybe just slightly under 3%. It's been close to 2%, but it hasn't really got down to the mandated 2% that they set out to do since 2022. But we've had about a 30% gross increase in living expenses based on just the last 4 or 5 years in dealing with the inflation. So tax cuts will help curb that a little bit. It'll help people spend more money. It'll help the economy. And honestly, it'll help create more taxes, because more people will be getting some of that money and paying taxes on it through their businesses, because it ends up becoming income. So I don't think overall Congress is going to see, oh my gosh, everybody's saving $5,000 in taxes. That's money we're not going to get. Not if it's circulated through the economy. They're going to get most of it just based on everybody paying a portion of taxes on how much momentum that extra $5,000 or $6,000 per household carries in the community, in the economy, by buying things and by creating the economic benefit to not just their own family, but to all the families that work in the places that they buy services and goods from. So I think that's the biggest thing, is really the tax breaks and the fact that people get to keep more of their money.
Jeff, as you mentioned, one of the biggest changes here for people listening to the program is going to be the tax savings. Does this change your tax strategy when you make plans for people listening to the program today?
Well, I don't think it'll change our tax strategy so much as it may not put as much pressure on the planning to do it as quickly if we can maintain reasonably low tax brackets. What I want to do is move as much money out of taxable accounts to non-taxable accounts or tax efficient accounts at the lowest tax rate possible. And if the 22 tax bracket remains in place and it was going to go back to the 25, great. But if we were hurrying to get all that money moved at a 24% tax rate because we thought it was going to go, the 22 was going to go up to 25 and the 24 was going to go back up to 28, maybe now instead of doing a 2 or 3 year Roth conversion plan, we can make this last chunk or tranche of converted assets and from a IRA pay taxes at 22%, maybe do it over 2 years rather than pay taxes at 24% over one more year before the tax rates flip back. So it may do a tweak or two to our tax planning, making it a little bit less stressful, perhaps. But I still think if you can move money now when the account is what it is today at a lower tax bracket than you probably will when you have more money and those IRAs and 401ks have grown maybe doubled or tripled in the next couple of decades. And then maybe the tax rates end up going up a few administrations after Trump leaves office. Who knows? They might find ways to tax you at a higher bracket, or just because you have more money, you might be pushed into a higher bracket. Why not move those assets to tax-free buckets now while we know what we're dealing with? And so we're still going to be very aggressive in tax planning. I don't mind paying extra tax now for a few years in order to save a lot of extra tax over many years or many decades in the future. It's basically a trade-off. Some people like kicking that can down the road indefinitely. I don't like to do that. Now, as far as the retirement accounts, the big beautiful bill really didn't do anything. It would have been great if a certain amount of RMDs were not taxed, but we can still use the same strategies to do direct contributions to charities. And we can still do things like that that might help you save taxes on some of those distributions. But what was in place before and the tax strategies we used before on IRAs and 401ks will by and large remain the same. No big deal. We had strategies that worked. We still do. As far as healthcare and Medicare, I know the big screaming on the hill by the opposition was it's taking away Medicare and Social Security benefits, and this big, beautiful bill is going to send all the old people to the poorhouse because they won't be able to afford anything. And that was just a bunch of fear mongering. And to my understanding, it didn't affect it. In fact, I think it permanently allows telehealth visits where they didn't used to be deductible. All the things that were health-related deductions remain in play. They didn't go away. HSA accounts are still able to use if you want to have a nice tax-efficient way to pre-fund future healthcare savings at a current tax deduction. There's really not anything lost there. I mean, sure, a lot of the HSA tax breaks, a lot of the tax deduction tax breaks for being able to, maximize your 401ks or IRAs are now at higher levels. Sure, they benefit higher income families, but higher income families also pay higher taxes at a higher rate. So will they receive more tax breaks on a percentage basis? Probably not, but on an overall gross basis, yeah, they will. But again, if you're in a high income bracket paying $100,000 a year in taxes and you get $10,000 a year in tax savings, you're still spending $90,000 in taxes. If the guy that's paying $4,000 in taxes gets a 25% break, let's just say, and now he's only paying $3,000 in taxes, that's pretty dang strong, but he only saved $1,000. Does that mean the rich guy got the biggest bulk of the bill? No. The rich guy only got, in a percentage basis, less than half of the benefit as the middle class, working class citizen. So, the left really tried to frame this as he's only helping his rich cronies out, but not so. I mean, if you look at the percentage of tax savings compared to what people were paying before, it's definitely skewed to the lower income earners, not the higher income earners. But higher income earners that were paying more taxes, they're going to pay more taxes and they're going to get a bigger chunk off the top, but probably a lower percentage.
We're talking with Jeff Hogan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa, talking about the big, beautiful bill. And again, if you'd like to sit down with Jeff, talk about how the big, beautiful bill may affect you and your journey towards a confident retirement, we're offering a no-cost, no-obligation Premier Retirement Review. And to get yours, call 520-780-9059. 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. You can make that call right now. All you've got to do is leave your name and number, and Shelley will call you back during the week and set up that appointment for you. No cost, no obligation whatsoever. It's not going to cost you a dime. 520-780-9059. We're online at premret.com, premret.com. Jeff, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got listener questions and more when Premier Retirement continues on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
Are you concerned a health crisis could become a wealth crisis for you in retirement? Well, you're not alone. But here's some good news. I'm Jeff Hogan from Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and for over 30 years, it's been my job as a financial advisor and fiduciary to manage investments and design tax-efficient plans to provide predictable cash flow and guaranteed retirement income for people just like you. If you're concerned about your level of market risk, your retirement savings, or if you feel you're paying too much in taxes, or if your current advisor isn't having these conversations, call us and request your complimentary Premier Retirement Roadmap. Now more than ever, you need a plan that can manage market volatility, utilize the most appropriate tools, and secure your financial future, reduce your taxes, and provide sustainable income in retirement. If you're unsure about your financial future or you just want a second opinion, call us now and get your no-cost, no-obligation Premier Retirement Roadmap at 520-780-9059. That's 520-780-9059. Or visit us online at premret.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Arizona State Registered Investment Advisor.
Solid wealth management advice is more important today than ever. If you're unsure about your current risk level, if you haven't heard from your current financial advisor, if you feel your successful retirement is in jeopardy, call Jeff Hogan at Premier Wealth Advisors at 520-600-6363. You deserve a team by your side to help protect what you've saved. Call Jeff Hogan at Premier Wealth Advisors today at 520-600-6363. Securities offered through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Arizona State Registered Investment Advisor.
You can't start a trip you've never taken without a plan, and you can't start your retirement journey without a comprehensive plan to get there safely. To request your no-cost Premier Retirement Roadmap, call 580-780-9059 or request it online at premret.com. Now back to more Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan and Jeff Shea.
Thank you so much for making this a part of your weekend. You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. We've been talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill, and in just a moment, we're going to answer listener questions. If you're listening to us on the radio, you're probably listening to us at one of our 4 times, Saturdays at 7 a.m., also 9 a.m. or 1 p.m., and we're on Sundays at 11 a.m. And don't forget, we're also a podcast. You can go to wherever you get your podcasts. Search for Premier Retirement with Jeff Hogan. You'll find this show and all of our past shows so you can stay on top of your journey towards a confident retirement. Once again, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. If you would like to make that call right now, you can do that. Take you about a minute to leave your name and telephone number. Shelley will call you back during the week, and then she'll set you up with an appointment to have a casual conversation with Jeff for you to ask the questions that you need the answers to with no cost or no obligation. 520-780-9059. You can also find out more about us online at premret.com. Okay, Jeff, listener question time. Al's listening to us in Tucson, and Al says, I'm 70 and receiving $130,000 inheritance right now. My $500,000 house is paid for. I have $70,000 in laddered CDs and $150,000 in a high-yield savings account, plus $500,000 in stocks and mutual funds. I'm single and receiving enough Social Security to live on. I'm not worried about leaving anything for heirs, as they're well taken care of. How should I invest this money for safety and growth?
Well, safety and growth, I'm not sure what you're saving it and growing it for if you don't have heirs that you want to leave money to. You know, you're 130, your house is paid for, you don't have that. You know, you're paying for food, gas, and a little bit of fun on your Social Security. My thought was either find some expensive hobbies. I mean, you could try golf at an expensive golf club. You could try, traveling and ride first class, spend some of that money if you want to spend it down, or if you just want to park it and hold it. If you said safety and growth, the only way I know that you can get safety and growth is really principal protected accounts that I use quite frequently with the bulk of that money. With interest rates as high as it's been lately, companies can make about 4% on your money, just like you can. Now, some insurance companies have really honed in on ways to leverage that interest and turn 4% into 8 or 10 or even 15 on a good year, maybe even more sometimes. If you backtest some of the new models with a 4% rate of return, you can see 10% or better returns over a 10-year period, which rival the stock market, yet doesn't have any principal risk. Those, I think, are the best cake and eat it too type of products to use if you really don't want to see your accounts go down. Have access to some of it every year. Usually 7 to 10% is what you can access in those accounts. If they're safe, they typically have a certain contract term, somewhere between 7 and probably 12 years is a pretty good average. That doesn't mean you can't get your money out. You could, but you might take a little hit on a penalty or a surrender charge, which is very often less than what you could lose in a bad week like we had in April of this year, as far as the market goes. So they're pretty friendly. That might be where you want to leave some of your money, keep some liquid that you can grab for just quick and easy. I can grab money out of the CDs like you have the ladder CD account. I think that's perfect for going on a trip or having something come due soon to replace your air conditioning or just do something fun or buy a new car and have a down payment. You have a high yield savings account. I know what the high yield is now, 4 or 5% would be good. I bet it's probably closer to 3. Again, you could still maybe get a bigger bang for the buck on that if you shopped it. I think the 500,000 in stocks and mutual funds. I mean, if you don't want the risk associated with those, that could see that account plummet to 300 or 400,000, or maybe even 250 if it goes in line with the 2008 and the 2000 correction, which we could have based on the current valuations in the stock market. I'm not ruling that out. I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm not ruling it out. And if you don't like to have a gut ache for seeing that happen, you might want to try one of these principal protected accounts. I mean, that would still leave you 250,000 roughly in assets in the CDs and the bank money. You've got another 130,000 coming in. If you had 130 plus the 500 grand in something that was principal protected, by the way, being 70, you're probably a little too old for a LIRP just because it does have a life insurance component. And typically the older you get, the more skittish insurance companies are to offer a good competitive life insurance type product. But I think the indexed annuities would be probably the best bang for your buck. If you're super healthy, maybe the life insurance version of it where that $500,000 or $600,000 could be placed in a policy over the next 5 or 6 years. And you'd have $1 million or so that you could spend while you're alive tax-free. And if you die, then whatever the balance is goes tax-free to somebody you care about. I know you say you don't care about leaving anything heirs, but maybe you want to leave it to a few of your neighbors and friends. I don't know, maybe some of your golf buddies, or you get a girlfriend between now and the time you pass away and you want to leave something for that person. And it would be on a tax benefited basis. So again, there's some tax-free ways to leave assets, or if you decide to use a charity, then it doesn't matter if you're using tax benefits or tax favorable assets, because charities automatically have a tax exemption. So you could leave, an account that has plenty of deferral in taxes and then end up not paying taxes because you leave whatever's left to a charity. In fact, if you did use the tax deferred type of accounts, you would only pay taxes on the gains of those type of accounts, those principal protected accounts. And so much as you use interest from gains, obviously that would be taxable just like the CDs. The difference is your laddered CD accounts, even if you keep rolling them over, you're still paying taxes on that interest every year, whether you use it or not. The nice part about principal protection outside of an IRA or 401k type money, and I'm not sure if your stocks and mutual funds are in qualified IRA type of accounts or not, but if they're not, then you wouldn't be paying taxes on capital gains when you trade, or dividends, or interest from some of those stocks and mutual funds that they always give you a 1099 after the end of the year, and you figure out, oh, gee, I have a tax problem I didn't know about. On a good year, you always have a good tax problem, but that just means you made money. So is it worth it? Yeah, generally. But what if you could still have those gains on good years and not pay a tax until you use the money? I think that's a lot more fair, and it's a lot more palatable to most people that I deal with. Once they realize the difference, they kind of choose the tax deferral and choose to be in control of their own tax situation, especially if they are looking for the safety and growth rather than just, hey, I don't care if I have any money when I die. Let's just swing for the fences and have just growth. If that's the case, let's trade the market. We've managed to have a really good return on our growth accounts and our managed accounts. But in spite of the fact that the market's probably overvalued, there's still upside if you buy the right stocks and watch your account. So whether you do it or hire somebody to do it, there's still upside. But again, that comes with risk. If you don't want the downside because you like safety, then consider those other accounts I just talked about.
Jeff, in reading between the lines of this question from Al, I mean, he has over $700,000 in assets right now. He's 70. He's not going to leave any to his heirs. He sounds like one of these people who just can't spend money. I mean, they've got millions of dollars, but they come to you and say, boy, I don't know, can I spend the $10,000 on this? Have you ever had clients like that?
Oh, I have plenty of clients like that. I mean, typically it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. If they've been really good savers and they have a lot of savings, it's sometimes really hard to get in that new mindset. In fact, just yesterday, I had a client come in that, wanted to live on $100,000 in retirement. Kid's doing great. They don't need to leave him any money. And I showed him a plan where they would still have more than $2 million in assets, which they have now, but could still live on, in a guaranteed way, almost $200,000 a year. And I don't know if they, in their mind, are going to come to grips with the idea that they can actually spend that extra $100,000. It was kind of like a mind-blowing experience to them. Like, wait a minute. I mean, we've been really working hard to save $1.5 million or close to $2 million for our retirement. And we're hoping that our Social Security plus a little bit out of those retirement accounts would still keep us at the 100,000 net that we're currently living on. You mean we could have lived on more? Yeah, you could. Well, but we don't need to. Well, okay, then I don't know, get charitable or just start developing new habits. But, a lot of people just need permission. They just need to have proof that they're going to have that income, that they aren't going to run out of money because they're not risking it all in the stock market. And if you're going to take the hold and hope or the Wall Street approach as to, well, you've got a bunch of money, but the market's volatile, so you better only take 4% out. Well, then you have a reason to be a little bit worried and a little bit skeptical and a little bit conservative in your spending habits. But if you put, let's say, half to 3/4 of your retirement funds into something that guarantees you income no matter what, that's insured, secured by assets and guarantees of insurance companies that are richer than the banks are and richer than Wall Street companies are in many cases, you can finally get that mindset of, oh, so I've still got a third of my money, maybe half of my money that I can still risk. And if it goes all the heck in a handbasket, I still have guaranteed income well above what I need. Yes, you do. So, that sometimes gives people the indication that they go ahead and spend. Now, obviously, I have people on the other end of the spectrum that are used to living on $200,000 a year, didn't save enough, and still want to live on $200,000 a year when 100 is more appropriate, and they've got to dial it back. So, I always like giving people the better news that they can live on more than they thought, but I find it very difficult for those guys to change and spend that extra money. They end up dying with bigger estates than they had planned. And those people on the opposite end of the spectrum have a really hard time dialing it back and living on less. So people kind of stay in the same mindset, and it's hard to get out of sometimes. But little by little, I think, if you get permission and have that proof, I think you can go forward with a little bit more confidence in retirement.
Al, thanks a lot for that question. And if you'd like proof and permission, of course, 520-780-9059 is our number. Make that call today. Okay, let's go to our next question, Jeff. It's Bill in Marana. Bill writes, I'm 84 and widowed. My daughter is the beneficiary of my IRA and the successor trustee for my revocable living trust. She's in a shaky marriage that could ensue in divorce. How can I prevent her soon-to-be ex-husband from claiming part of her inherited IRA and assets in the trust?
Well, the first thing you can do, Bill, is live longer than the divorce. As long as you're there after the divorce, those assets are not going to be considered anyway, nor will any assets you leave to the trust. If it's a soon-to-be ex-husband, then great. It's going to be taken care of automatically. If you're worried about it because your health is maybe in question and maybe this divorce could be a long, drawn-out thing. I just talked to a guy that went 11 years it took him to get the divorce. So, if that's the case, maybe you might not make it to 95. I hope you do, but maybe you won't. So, what do you do? Well, a trust is a great way to keep things out of court, out of probate, out of those situations where lawyers can fight and scrape for the other person to grab assets. A trust is just between you and your assets and the trustee. So if you made your daughter the trustee, including on your IRA, now she'd still be held to the same rules as far as having to get the money out, pay taxes on it, and use it within the 10-year rule, because you'd obviously be passing away after 2020 when those rules changed through the Secure Act. But they, any assets that you leave in the IRA, if it only has her name on as beneficiary, she can continue to keep those as sole and separate trust assets and only use them for her benefit when she sees fit, as long as she is the only trustee, as long as you've disclaimed the husband X by not naming him at all and not including him in that distribution, or including him as a potential secondary beneficiary or alternative trustee, or in any sense of the word listed as a potential beneficiary, then those assets can avoid that from happening.
Bill, we appreciate you listening to us in Marana. And again, call us here at 520-780-9059 if you'd like to talk to Jeff. And for sending in that question and us using it on the air, we'll send you out Jeff's book, Retirement: The Road Ahead. Okay, Jeff, next question is Veronica. And Veronica is listening to us in Sabino Canyon. Veronica says, I'm 58 years old and single. I recently lost both of my parents and inherited $240,000. Due to life choices, divorce, and living paycheck to paycheck, I don't have a lot saved for retirement. I have about $100,000 saved for retirement, excluding my parents' $240K. I owe $258,000 on my mortgage on a house worth $700,000. I'm not looking to retire before age 65, but I'm hoping to downsize and maybe take a less stressful job for half the money if I can find one. I'm really confused about what I should do with my parents' money to set myself up for a solid retirement. I don't know if I should invest it, pay off the mortgage, save aggressively, or downsize to a smaller home and invest the proceeds. I'm paralyzed by the choices, and I have a low risk tolerance. I currently have most of my $100,000 in a CD at 4% and the rest in a high yield savings account. Finance makes me break out in hives. Can you help me make a smart decision?
Well, I like the idea of downsizing and being mortgage free. I probably wouldn't pay off that mortgage because I'm guessing you've had it for a while and you probably have a 3% or lower interest rate. I wouldn't buy another house if you have $258,000 owing a $700,000 house. You're looking at buying maybe a $400,000 house free and clear if you sell it. I wouldn't pay the mortgage off now, especially if the interest rates in the 3 or 4 range or lower. I would continue to invest that money. The other thing you could consider, if you know you're going to downsize and get rid of that mortgage just from the equity that you have in your $700,000 home, I think that's a wise choice. And then you have no mortgage payment. That increases your net cash flow right out of the bat. You live paycheck to paycheck, but now that paycheck doesn't have to include a mortgage in it. You just have to buy food and gas and a little bit of fun. The thing you could do with the 240, consider this, is you're 58, want to retire in about 7 years. That $240,000 could be worth about $500,000 for income at age 65, which would give you, I don't know, somewhere in the range of $40,000 a year in retirement income if you wanted to put it in one of these fixed index annuities that I talk about that guarantee lifetime income. Sounds to me like you're not going to be in a big tax bracket problem. So I'm guessing you probably aren't going to need to look at a LIRP as an option. If you're in good health, that might be a way to get some tax-free income. We want to look at what your Social Security is going to be at age 65. That's when you get to be on Medicaid and not, or Medicare, and not have to worry about health insurance and things like that. I don't know if your job includes that now. Hopefully so. If not, your income is at a place where you get a decent rate through the exchange or on your health insurance somewhere. But that's a big one. That's a big reason that people want to wait to 65 generally. I don't know if you want to downsize at age 65 or downsize sooner. Depending on your cash flow, you might want to downsize sooner than later and just do that swap now, live in the place that you're going to age and get rid of that mortgage and be able to save a little bit of that retirement income. Maybe your job now has a 401k. You just can't afford to invest in it because you don't have any extra because of that mortgage. But if you saved $1,800 a month in mortgage payments and you could put that away, $20,000 a year for the next 7 years, there's another $250,000, $300,000 in potential investment assets that you could have to help you retire. And I could see you retiring on somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 a year based on the numbers that you just gave me, and based on just an assumption that Social Security is going to be probably in the 2,000 or so range. For more accurate numbers, we could put a plan together and do the math and figure out where you'll actually be based on some of the guarantees that are available out there. I think, having $100,000 in assets as you grab at any time is probably a smart thing, just because you need some of that. But if that $200,000 is, or 240 could be used for that inheritance, could be used for a nice retirement income stream, I'd look at that as an option as well, or maybe a portion of it, and just see where you want to be in retirement. I mean, if you're making $50,000 a year, I think you're going to get a pay raise in retirement. If you're making $100,000 a year, you're not going to get that big of a decrease, but you won't have a mortgage payment, and that'll effectively give you an increase. You'll live on the same or better net income, most likely. So I don't think you're necessarily in a super bad position. I don't think you're in a bad position at all, actually. You've still got 7 years to catch up. You've got a bunch of equity in the house that, can actually be spent. And if worse comes to worse in the future, you don't want to look at this until you're at least 65, but a reverse mortgage where you can actually spend some of the equity in your home. You could actually, if you decide you want to stay in that $700,000 house, you could pay on that mortgage and make more interest on that $240,000 to cover the mortgage. And then when you quit working, you could actually reverse finance, get reverse mortgage, get out of the financing that's left on the mortgage, and actually get a dump of cash into your savings for another investment. And then you are able to keep that home until you pass away. And all you do is you pass on back to the bank a house with some equity, or onto your heirs, whatever the equity is in that house, minus the loan plus interest that they gave you to live on during your retirement. So a lot of ways to skin this retirement cap for you. I think you are in better shape than you think, and would love to explore those options and show you how much more confident you can be in retirement and not to have you breaking out in hives anymore.
Veronica, thank you so much for the question. Of course, you can give us a call here at Premier Retirement. We'd love to talk to you. Just a casual conversation. 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. Go ahead, Veronica, make that call. It'll take you about 60 seconds to do that. Shelley then will take down your number. Someone will call you back, probably Shelley, and then set up an appointment for you. Again, no cost, no obligation, no judgment. Veronica, we would love to talk to you, and we really appreciate you listening to us on the radio. You're listening to Premier Retirement with Jeff Ogan. 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. If you would like to sit down with Jeff and talk about your journey towards a confident retirement, no cost, no obligation, no judgment, we'd love to help you. 520-780-9059. You can find out more about us online at primret.com. Jeff, let's continue to talk about the tax minimization strategies that you use here at Premier Retirement as it relates to this one big, beautiful bill, which, of course, extends a lot of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act's provision. We have another question here, doesn't give the name, but it says, I'm 60, planning to retire in 5 years. Because of the big, beautiful bill, should I be changing my tax strategies?
The core advice is still going to stay similar. Pay the least amount of taxes you can during your retirement. That if that means pay taxes now at a lower rate on less money than you'll be spending over the next 3 or 4 decades during your retirement, then continue with the plan as set forth. The nice part about the big, beautiful bill is that now we have a little bit longer to make those plans effective if we need it. But I don't think I'll ever change my focus on tax planning. If you want to change the way you save, we'll look at the whole picture. You might find out that because of the forward-looking tax breaks that you're going to receive, you have a little bit more to spend. And that might say, well, I don't need to spend all that. Maybe I can save a little bit more. Maybe I can create an account that I can leave my heirs and leave them a little bit fat and happy. Maybe I can create a scholarship account for my grandkids. Some of the things that maybe you didn't feel like you could afford before may actually be possible with these new laws. So look at all the options. Obviously, our annual reviews and our quarterly reviews are going to look a lot different going forward because we don't have that deadline of next year to look at the tax brackets going back up and the window of opportunity be gone. There's still plenty left, and there's still plenty of tax planning opportunities. We're still going to be focused on it.
Jeff, the big, beautiful bill was signed on July 4th, and pretty sure that it's going to remain in effect, all of these provisions through Trump's presidency, which is, another 3.5 years. But beyond that, who knows? Does that change your tax planning strategies, or do you pretty much use the same strategies as you did before?
No, the strategy we used before are still going to endure changes. We expect that, the only thing constant is change, right? We know there's going to be changes going forward. We just know that those changes are going to be a little bit further down the road. It gives us more opportunities, but I don't think we're going to change the core of how we plan or the fact that we're going to try to create as much tax efficient income as we can for our retired clients. We're going to get some extended tax cuts and deductions. I think the biggest catch in the big, beautiful bill is if it doesn't create enough tax inflow to cover the long-term government debt that's been so prevalent in the last couple of decades, I don't know how we're going to have to dig out of that hole. I hope it all happens because of the increased economic benefit of these tax cuts, where there's more money momentum, where there's more taxes overall created, and we actually increase the tax rolls rather than decrease the tax rolls like some of the opposing members of Congress stated was going to happen. I think Trump's a better businessman than most of them, and I think he's got the long-term picture in mind. And I'm on his side. I'm going to at least believe in it until it doesn't work. But, I'm more of I majored in business and economics as well, and I see the angle that he takes on the way he thinks about the economy and about taxes, and I'm on the same page with him. And so we're just going to continue to plan based on the fact that these things are going to be in place at least another 4 years. Some people say that he's going to find some way to finagle out another third term, and that might not be a bad idea. We'll just have to see how the next few years go. So there's still a lot out there. We still don't know what the end game is going to really look like. We know what the plan is. The world's supposed to be a better place in a few years because Trump was back in as president. I think we've already made it better. I think we've already made a lot of great strides in the right directions. And I hope it continues. It all remains to be seen. But we're not changing our planning focus. It's really never changed with any president. It's really all about the client, keeping more of their money, sending less to Washington, and leaving a legacy if they choose to do so.
Talking with Jeff Hogan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management here in Tucson and Mesa. Our program, of course, called Premier Retirement. If you would like to talk to Jeff, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. Make that call right now while you're thinking about it. 520-780-9059. Just a casual conversation with no cost and absolutely no obligation whatsoever. We're also online at premret.com. That's PREMRET.com. Jeff, out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, but most importantly, as always, every week, I want to thank the greatest listeners in the world for listening to us. Of course, they are ours. So for Jeff Hogan, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week right here with another edition of Premier Retirement on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
Investment advisory services provided through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, an Arizona state-registered investment advisor. Securities transactions are placed through TD Ameritrade. Insurance and annuity products are offered through Premier Advantage Inc., DBA Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any reference to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the insurance carrier. The show is intended for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as advice or recommendations. Due to show format, accuracy, and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Premier Retirement and its representatives do not provide legal or tax advice and may only conduct business with residents of states and jurisdictions where they're properly registered.
Are you concerned a health crisis could become a wealth crisis for you in retirement? Well, you're not alone. But here's some good news. I'm Jeff Hogan from Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and for over 30 years, it's been my job as a financial advisor and fiduciary to manage investments and design tax-efficient plans to provide predictable cash flow and guaranteed retirement income for people just like you. If you're concerned about your level of market risk, your retirement savings, or if you feel you're paying too much in taxes, or if your current advisor isn't having these conversations, call us and request your complimentary Premier Retirement Roadmap. Now more than ever, you need a plan that can manage market volatility, utilize the most appropriate tools, and secure your financial future, reduce your taxes, and provide sustainable income in retirement. If you're unsure about your financial future or you just want a second opinion, call us now and get your no-cost, no-obligation Premier Retirement Roadmap at 520-780-9059. That's 520-780-9059. Or visit us online at premret.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Arizona State Registered Investment Advisor.
If you're planning to retire soon or already in retirement, you more than likely have some questions, like when should I take Social Security? How can I avoid running out of money? Or how am I going to deal with taxes in retirement? Premier Retirement and Wealth Management can help answer these questions. They've been designing retirement plans for people like you for more than 20 years. They recognize that you're unique, so your plan is tailored to your individual needs. They'll work with you to determine what it costs to be you in retirement. Then design a cash flow plan, a tax plan, how to pay for health and long-term care plan, estate plan, and how to deal with the uncertainties of life. If you'd like to begin a conversation to answer your questions, call for your no-cost, no-obligation financial review at 520-780-9059. That's 520-780-9059. Or request it online at premret.com. That's PREMRET.com. Investment advisory services offered through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Arizona State Registered Investment Advisor.